We might just get started because people will no doubt be filtering into the webinar room as I keep chatting. So we'll let that just do its thing. And I'd firstly like to begin by acknowledging the Darug people, the traditional custodians on the land on which I'm presenting this webinar to you today. And I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and future. And I'd also like to extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us on the webinar today. So welcome. So who are SIMNA? SIMNA are a network that's really about fostering and supporting social impact measurement practice in Australia. And there are a few goals, but one of them is really to help lead and shape what's an emerging practice in Australia with growing interest, to be honest with you. There's lots of interest, more interest in this space, year on year. So it's very much about making social impact measurement accessible and achievable. And part of that involves sharing some of the great projects or case studies that are happening out there in the community where organisations are giving social impact measurement a go and passing on knowledge about what they've seen works and also, what approaches have been less successful. So it's really about the baton of knowledge and passing it on to the network. The network's made up of over 1,000 members and lots of them work in the non-profit space or the community space. And we've got a number of people on the webinar today from those areas, but also government and the consultancy environment, and also as well in the corporate space too. So the SIMNA network hosts lots of events like this here today, like this webinar. It used to be very much a face-to-face thing, then COVID hit and lots of them are also online now still. So if you're interested in social impact measurement generally, keep your eyes peeled about being part of some of those in future. There's lots of good stuff happening. Who are the Western Sydney SIMNA Committee? Well, I'm one of 4 members alongside our co-chairs, Kristina Medak, who may well be waving, and Sophie Davis, and also former co-chair Amy Lawton. They're all on the call here today. And we started probably 4 or 5 years ago from a need to really wanting to shine a light on some of the good work that's happening in Western Sydney, which represents, the 3rd largest economy in Australia, which I will never not be impressed by. And today is very much about that. Today's about shining a light on Community Hubs Australia and the good stuff that they've been doing in Western Sydney and elsewhere with their Community Hubs program. But definitely the committee was born out of a recognition that, not everything is CBD based in the cool stuff happening in social impact measurement. And we really wanted to also help build capacity as well in the Western Sydney area. So stay tuned for future events next year from our committee. I might just hand over to Laura Glynn from SIMNA just for a couple of housekeeping rules, and then we'll get started.
Hey, hi everyone. I just wanted to also begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land where I live and work, the Turrbal and Yagara people, and to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Just all the usual Zoom housekeeping that I'm sure you're very familiar with by now, but please keep your microphones on mute if you're not speaking. As you probably saw as you came in, this session is being recorded today. And if you've got any questions throughout the session, then please just enter them in chat and we should have some time for them at the end.
Thanks so much, Laura. And also, lots of questions are welcome. We love that. So please don't be shy. So today, yes, we're talking about Community Hubs Australia, who run a program called the Community Hubs program. And it's embedded in a number of primary schools across Australia, many of which are in Western Sydney and possibly even in your local community. You may know of one. And we felt it was a really interesting case study to bring to you, not only in terms of what they're trying to achieve, and I guess just really great positive areas of change they're working in at a very grassroots level, but also in terms of the different mechanisms they've put in place for measuring positive change, because there's so much to kind of learn from that. All of us can sort of take that into our own work. And we wanted to shine a light on what they've been doing because it's been going for a number of years now. So I'm not going to do any justice by talking about the Community Hubs program, but what I will do is hand over to Hiranthi, Maurice and Kristina in a sec to talk about their program in far more detail. But before I do that, I just wanted to give a little brief intro about their backgrounds. So Hiranthi Perera is the head of program at Community Hubs Australia, and she's been working with the organisation since 2017, supporting the rollout and the expansion of the National Community Hubs program. And she's got over 10 years of experience in the community development sector. And Maurice Syber is the reporting and analytics manager at Community Hubs Australia. And his key focus is ensuring that the organisation has easy to access data-based analytics, which anyone working in the social impact space loves, and insights to make data-driven decisions in both day-to-day operations, but also in terms of developing their longer-term strategy. And finally, and importantly, Kristina Medak is a hub leader at Parramatta West Public School in New South Wales. And she started in her role as hub leader just as COVID started to impact schools and communities in 2022, I think. Is that right, Kristina? 21. Today, I read your lips. Today you'll hear about how she started this place-based program when there was no physical space. And she'll also be talking about how things have evolved since they opened their community hub doors. So I just wanted to welcome you all on the call today, and I might hand over to Hiranthi to kick off and tell us all the cool things that Community Hubs Australia are doing with their program.
Awesome. Thank you, Natalie. And thanks to you and the rest of the SIMNA team for enabling this opportunity to talk about the work we do. We're really passionate about it. And so it's great to hear that others are really interested in learning more. I'm going to just preface with the fact that my throat is a little bit dodgy at the moment. So if I do turn myself off mute very sporadically, Maurice will chip in. So just wanted to let you know I will come back if I do disappear at any point. Hopefully it doesn't happen. So just a little bit of background on who we are. So Community Hubs Australia, as Natalie said, we're a national not-for-profit and our focus is on building social cohesion across Australia. So we've been around now for over 10 years and we are very fortunate to have quite a unique funding structure which enables all of this important work to happen out in the community. So we as an organisation are funded by the Scanlon Foundation, who are a philanthropic organisation based here in Melbourne, in Victoria, which is where I'm joining you from today. And we actually get then both federal and state government funding to roll out the National Community Hubs program. So it's quite a unique kind of funding structure and one that we're very fortunate to have, I think. So in terms of the National Community Hubs program, we have 4 key pillars to our program, which you can see on the screen there. All of our community hubs are based in primary schools across Australia, and we are close to having now 100 hubs across Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria and South Australia. And as Natalie mentioned, 19 of those across the Western Sydney area. And so we've got hubs in Blacktown, Bankstown, Cumberland, Fairfield and Parramatta. And we've also got 3 hubs in the city of Liverpool as well. We've got 3, I guess, key requirements for any school that wants to join our network. And that is the fact that they have a space where the community are welcome to call their own. So what we call our community hub space. The second is that the school is going to recruit a hub leader. So every school has a unique position which really coordinates the programs and activities that happen in that hub space. And what's key to really focus on there is that they're a coordinator, so they're not necessarily someone who's actually facilitating or running programs themselves, because we partner with key organisations to really provide those programs and activities on the ground. And the third is that a school will financially contribute to the ongoing sustainability of the program after the 3rd year of a hub being in place in that school. And the reason why I explain that is because we're a very well networked organisation. So what's important to note is that here at Community Hubs Australia, we're a really small team. So there's 9 of us. who are based here in Victoria. And so we work in close partnership with a number of support agencies across the country. So these are like-minded organisations who also have a focus on building social cohesion. Some of them work in the settlement space, others are local councils. But basically, they're organisations that are going to bring in intelligence, partnership opportunities, potentially funding and professional development opportunities for our hub schools and for our hub leaders. And so, given we're focusing on Western Sydney today, our support agency is Settlement Services International, who works in our Western Sydney region, as well as Liverpool City Council. And we also work in partnership with Illawarra Multicultural Services, who support our 3 hubs in Wollongong. So the key thing I do want to really stress today is that although we're here to talk about social impact measures, the actual measures themselves and the outcomes themselves are really measured by our schools and by the support and by the agencies who come in to deliver their programs and activities on the ground in the hubs. So we're really clear that as an organisation, the Community Hubs program is to provide that space. And that space is provided in the school that's going to connect people in with the services that already exist in their local community. So we're really clear that we're not there as a service provider. We're not there to replicate or duplicate anything that's happening already on the ground, but it's simply to provide that bridge, that gateway, that soft entry point into services and into other referral opportunities that are going to support these families to connect and be part of their local community. So to tell you a little bit more about what happens on the ground, I'm going to throw to Kristina Medak from Parramatta West Primary to tell you a little bit about what happens in the day of a life of a hub leader.
Thank you, Hiranthi, and thank you everybody for having me here today. As Natalie mentioned, my journey with Community Hubs started in 2021, at the beginning of 2021, and I was actually just presented with this concept of a community hub in a school. I'd never actually worked in the community sector. My background is actually fashion and design, which is like the total opposite of what I'm doing here. But it was a change for me. It was something new and an opportunity. And I've learnt over the past 2 years that it's exactly where I need to be. When I started, we had a space that was allocated for the hub, but it was just a dumping ground for current renovations that were happening at the school. So I didn't technically have a space. I had a concept and I knew what I needed to do, but my obstacle was the fact that no parents were allowed on site because of the pandemic restrictions. And with engagement being one of the key focuses of community hubs, I then had to step out of the school to connect with the community. And I did that through meet and greets at the gates. I had a little flyer and I started kind of creating a bit of interest about, you know, an upcoming community hub at the school. And I also did a survey with parents just to sort of see what they wanted from the community hub, what their needs were. And through that, obviously, everything that they asked for, I couldn't deliver because I had no space. But what I could deliver was a walking program because it was outside the school gates. And that walking program was the start of the incredible journey that is today, which I'll tell you a little bit more about later. But basically in term 2 of last year, we were able to open our doors. I had done a little bit of renovation with the GA and we got a space ready that was comfortable enough for our community to run some programs in. And we started just with, what I did was in the meantime was I also networked with some program partners and we were able to get a coffee and chat program running, some Pilates program, a yoga program, and also a junior storytime program for 4 to 5-year-olds on site. And that was like super exciting because for a long time now, the community hadn't had a chance to connect. And then 8 weeks into my journey, lockdown. So I got to, I had just gotten my head around, what I needed to do in the hub. And then it all just, all turned upside down. So what I had to do was navigate these place-based programs to an online platform. Now, for some of my program partners, that worked really well. For some, it didn't. But what it gave me an opportunity to do was then introduce some new programs that were able to be run from an online platform. And basically term 3 was like term 3 and term 4 were complete lockdown. All our families were homeschooling. There was no connection. The community hub was really the only space that they had to come to outside of, I guess, a school sort of setting where families could connect, they could participate in programs. And we actually had an incredible level of engagement, despite the fact that we were a brand new hub and really not many people knew about us. But I think the fact that I was really pushing a lot of Facebook, a lot of WhatsApp, parents started telling each other about the programs, and every week we had numbers just driving up, people wanting to be connected. What term 3 also saw for our hub was, unfortunately, a lot of financial stress, a lot of food insecurity. So my role almost changed from not just being the fun hub leader, providing all these programs where they could, kind of get away, do some mindfulness, meditation, yoga. I had to look for services that could actually help our families out. So I connected with a couple of organisations who are able to give our community vouchers to support them, bill help. And then I also teamed up with 2 local businesses, and we ran a fantastic hamper drive. And where we actually were able to give out over 100 hampers to families in need. And that project alone had the most amazing flow-on effect, which I will tell you about shortly. So that was basically year 1 of my kind of role as a hub leader. And then next slide, please, Maurice. So this was over the Christmas holidays, we underwent a huge renovation, which was like amazing. And I came back to a space that was doubled, that was just ready to take our community in. And all finally renovated, and we started opening up with programs immediately. So everything that we had running on an online platform, we moved to place-based. Parents were so excited to finally be able to meet face-to-face because they hadn't done that for 8 months. So we started off with bringing back our yoga class. We had our coffee and chats. And then what we did was we did an official sort of opening in week 7, which coincided with International Women's Day. And so I think that was going to be a bit of a kind of a show for me of really like how much impact did I have over that that period that we were closed. And it was unbelievable. We had over 80 families come through the doors for that one event, and you could just tell that they were buzzing and they were so excited to have this space. They couldn't believe that this was something that was available to them in a school setting, because really, I'd never had it, and a lot of our families had never seen anything like it. Next slide. Then what we did was we kicked straight into English classes. So in term 1, we only had 2 English classes running. Term 2, we had already moved to 3 English classes. And now in term 3 and 4, we actually have 4 English classes running. Our Fridays are back-to-back classes, and we do a Thursday afternoon class. What we noticed, especially with our basic class, last year and this year, we've had a lot of new arrival families. So with little to no English. So our beginner program was far too advanced for them, and we recognised that and brought in our basic program. And that has further connected the community, which has been incredible, because a lot of these families have come and have nobody and don't know much about our culture and what we do here in Australia. This space has given them that connection. They've taken these connections and then moved them outside the hub and into the community. So we've got families now that knew no one, that are part of a bigger clique, which has been incredible for us to witness and experience. And just watching the the actual confidence grow in these women. And, you know, we provide free childminding as well, thanks to community hubs, which is incredible. So it doesn't limit anybody from coming in. We try and make it as inviting and as inclusive. And as you can see in our photos, we cover a whole multicultural group, and everybody just gets along, everybody enjoys the classes, and it's just given our hub a whole new kind of element of connection. I'll go to the next slide, please, Maurice. One of our other fantastic programs that we run is our early years storytime transition program, which is aimed at children who are 4 to 5 years old and starting kindergarten next year. We are fortunate enough that the school has given us one of our amazing EAL teachers who looks after our children on a Thursday. We initially started with one program and had probably like a wait list of about 30 families because we just couldn't simply fit everybody in. Now, fortunately, we have 2 programs, packed programs that we run every Thursday. And just watching today, like, it was interesting because all of these children I saw today at orientation, and just to see how comfortable they are in that school environment already, just because they've had that early connection with other children, with teaching staff, and also for the parents. They recognise each other, you know, when they get to school, you know, and for a lot of them, it's their first child joining the school. So that's given them a wonderful kind of base to start on. Next page. Or slide. Thank you, Maurice. And in amongst all of that, we run a million other programs. So we do coffee and chats, we do online yoga. We also have 2 supported playgroups that we run off-site but on school grounds. We still have our walking group. We do a lot of vocational workshops. So we run like first aid courses, we run beauty courses. We also connect them to the Parramatta College where they go and do a lot of other courses. So they're all upskilling themselves, which has been amazing. And I think the hub space has given them the confidence to do that. We also do a lot of service referrals. So obviously there's a lot of mums who want to go and get their license. They want to go and learn a new skill. They want to educate themselves, so we can refer them on to services that can help them do that. As you'll see in one of the photos, in the second photo on the top with all the ladies looking back in their beautiful jackets, that was a program that we ran with the Social Outfit, who run a program with for migrant women to help them learn a new skill. So while they were learning to embroider these jackets, they also got to earn a wage, which was incredible. And these mums were just overjoyed, like to have that opportunity, because it's not something that you would normally get in a school space, you know, but community hubs obviously allows for that to happen. And then if you see at the bottom second picture, that's coming back to what I was speaking about before with our hamper drive. We have been so fortunate to team up with the One Box, who deliver fresh food boxes to our hub every week for 39 families that are doing it tough. And we've fortunately, the success of that program has now secured us another 2 years of commitment from the One Box. So we know now that we at least can provide food security for, you know, some of our most vulnerable families for the next 2 years. And that's pretty much me in a nutshell. So, you know, my community brings in so much knowledge and skill to the school, to the hub. We've been on an incredible journey, and like as of today, we've just clocked in at over 300 families that have visited the hub this year alone. So I think, which is an incredible achievement, given that, you know, we had 1 year of complete downtime. So it's such a wonderful program, and I just wish every school could have it, because I think it's of such benefit to everybody. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Kristina. They're brilliant photographs. And, you know, that's just touching the surface and one hub, and yet there are many others. But, you know, within all of that complexity, one thing, you know, obviously today is really about also understanding how do you measure the positive impact that all of those different activities have on hub participants. So I might sort of hand over to Hiranthi and also Maurice as well, possibly around, yeah, just sharing how you approach social impact measurement with a program like that.
Yeah, well, as you can see from Kristina's presentation, there's a whole lot that happens in hubs, and you also see images of some of the community members that we're obviously reaching through the hubs program. So look, the fact of the matter is everything we do in the hub and everything we measure in the hub needs to have a benefit to the hub participant at the end of the day, needs to have a benefit for the school, or in some cases it's a reporting requirement back to government. So as I mentioned, our money comes to us from the Scanlon Foundation, but then we've got our federal funders who are the Department of Home Affairs, and then we've got 4 sets of state governments that also fund the program. So as you can imagine, that's a lot of different reporting measures and reporting requirements, but I purposely mentioned the government part of that being last, because we really do want to ensure that everything we measure is going to actually have a benefit to the participant, to the school, and to the community, rather than, you know, ticking a box, so to speak. And where possible, we try to reduce the amount of noise in the network. So we very much hold, I guess, the responsibility for ensuring the quality of the data, the cleaning of the data, just so it reduces the burden on the network. And as you can see from Kristina's presentation, our hub leaders are incredibly skilled individuals, but they are people. They want to be talking to people, connecting them in with services. We're there to provide that connection. We're not there to survey our families. And so again, we're very mindful to only collect de-identified data. So none of our data is identified. So in terms of how we've evolved, I guess in over the years, you know, we've gone from using things like Excel workbooks and for each hub to record and report their data, to now using a cloud-based online portal. Likewise, we're very committed in that any data we collect, we share it back with the network. And so again, we've gone from using printable PDF documents, so a nice little snapshot, to now using an online sort of reporting portal once again. So we use SIA as our kind of reporting and data analytics kind of platform to then share back the data with the network. So we are constantly reviewing and evolving everything we do. As you know, as Maurice and I were chatting before the session today, I kind of said, like, nothing we do, we never get things right the first time around. And so it's that constant evolving of everything we do, and everything we do is co-designed and co-built with the network. So whether it be the actual reporting templates themselves, whether it's, you know, qualitative information, the questions, the templates, the tools we use, is always something that we co-design and co-build with the network. So in addition to the data, I guess the key thing to note is we know that such a massive way we get value and we can kind of measure the impact of what we do is through the stories. So I could rattle off, I'm sure, many stats on, you know, the number of families we see or the number of attendances there are at programs, but if I tell you a story, that's going to stick. So another key part of what we do is collecting the stories and sharing the stories back with community, back with government, and back through things like our annual year in reviews and media reviews and videos and stories and things like that. And these days, that's probably a little bit easier thanks to social media and things like that.
Unmute myself here. Yeah, can I haven't, in our chats to get to this point, the videos. So are you utilizing videos as well as kind of part of observational kind of observational data, or as part of storytelling? How are you using the video stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Kristina mentioned, we had 2 years of lockdown. And so when you've got a place-based program, like, how do you actually kind of measure that impact? And so you know, it was phenomenal, the job that our hub leaders did in transitioning a program that is place-based and people-centred and delivered in a school to being an online. So, you know, you record the kind of feedback you receive from the participants, but we were able to then record attendances to 2 sessions of English and playgroup and things like that that were being delivered on Zoom. And so, yeah, it is about being able to kind of record and capture those stories to be able to then share them back with community groups. And, you know, another key thing that we learnt during that time was the importance of things like voice recording. So in terms of us transferring information back to community as well. So for a lot of the families that we see in the hubs, they can't read or write in their own language, let alone in English. And so we're very fortunate in that, you know, I think we've got close to 100 hub leaders across our network. Many of them, probably 70% of those, are from non-English speaking backgrounds themselves. So we have a very highly skilled, culturally competent, multilingual network that we can call on kind of to support our engagement with communities. So we definitely learned a lot of little tips and tricks along the way of COVID, as much as it was a different way of working for us.
We've had a couple of questions that beautifully segue into the next section of the discussion today. And I know people are always interested in this stuff. I certainly am. Can you tell everyone more about the measurement tools that you're using at Community Hubs Australia to measure impact? Because there'd be a fair few. So you sort of touched on SIA, I think you called it. So yeah, just a bit of a deep dive there would be much appreciated, I think.
Maurice, I'm going to let you handle that one.
Yeah, sure. Look, I'll start with the quantitative internal tools for measuring data. I'll just share my screen. So the first tool we have is Hub Portal, and this sits on a larger platform we call Hub Central, which is really where hub leaders log in. They've got all their resources for where to find grant information and how to run the hub. But they also, this is where they collect their de-identified data. So the 2 main ways we collect data, of course, is demographics, how many families, and also how many direct service referrals outside of the hub they're making. The second thing is they're just telling us for each activity, how many adults, children, and volunteers showed up on that first day. This provides us with great visibility to the health of the network, but it also allows us to feedback, like Hiranthi said, the health of the network back to the network, so they can see how they're going. They can see, you know, there's a gap in vocational training for next term that we may want to fill. And it also is a great platform because we can do improvements on it year on year and really help the network minimize their noise and increase the data quality. And so that's the main one. That's the one we report to government from as well. And then the second thing we do, second thing of many, the second main thing would be the census. So we did a census last in 2019, and that's really tells us, as censuses do, who are coming to networks, who are coming to the hubs, what do they come to the hubs for, and why they come to the hubs, you know, and what they want to get out of it. So back in 2019, it was an optional opt-in paper-based census, and we've got another one planned for next year that we're very excited about. The next one I'm going to hand over to Hiranthi.
Yeah, so as Maurice mentioned, we obviously collect the quantitative data through our portal. And then back in 2019, this again was prompted from the network, from those hubs that have been in the network for quite some time, asking us that question of how do I know that I'm actually making an impact in the community? So yes, I'm running these programs and yes, I'm running these activities and people are coming along, but how do I know that they're actually making a difference? And it was a fair question and we didn't have an answer to that. So we worked in partnership with the Medak Children's Research Institute, who have got a wealth of experience in this space. And together we co-designed and co-built over a 6-month period a quality improvement framework. So, and I still recall we sat down with all of our support coordinators that were working across the country as that first step to kind of go, well, are our outcomes and objectives as an organisation still fit for purpose? So that's where we started. We then brought together a team or a working group, I should say, of hub leaders from across the country to ensure that whatever tools and templates we were creating and whatever questions we were asking weren't onerous. And so it was all about ensuring that it was providing the hub leaders with the opportunity to stop and to reflect and to review and then to revise. So, and so through that, as you can see there, we've got what we call our rapid reviews, which we do twice a year, which is really just a stock take on how are things going in the hub, which we encourage all schools to do at the end of a term. And then there's an annual review process, which is the 12-month review. And then based on those reviews, putting forward an annual plan for the following year. And again, it's ensuring that both the school leaders have involvement in that process, because again, it's the school that signs in. So it is an opt-in model. So all schools opt in to have a community hub in their school. So it's really important that the principals have got buy-in to what is happening on the ground in the hub. And so they're really working together cohesively as a team, together with their hub leader, as well as their local support coordinator on the ground as well. It's also been our main tool for how we now capture those stories that I mentioned earlier that are so vitally important. And so it gives us the opportunity as an organisation to hear at least at the minimum twice a year from all hubs in the network. And we've actually introduced a process whereby we sit down together now as a team around the boardroom table. We all take home about half a dozen and read them, and then we come back and we share those reflections. So it enables us as an organisation to grow and learn and to hear directly from each of the schools as to what's playing out for them. Next slide.
Okay. Hiranthi, I will take over for a bit. So we have also enlisted some external support. We had Deloitte come in and run a social return on investment based on 2019 data. I think we've got one of the Deloitte team on the team meeting. Hello. So which had a fantastic return where we are gaining $2.2 for every dollar spent on the program. So hubs have a Hiranthi, how are you going?
I'm back.
You're back.
Sorry. Thanks, Maurice. Look, it's a really busy slide, mindful of that. But I guess the key thing, I guess, again, to stress on this is we know that our organisation and our hub schools and our support agencies do an amazing job. And we see that year on year, the program's growing, we're evolving, we've got more partners that are partnering with us. But we also know that these sort of external evaluations have real value to government. So we commissioned this piece of work just so we could actually put a monetary value on the work we were doing, which is great.
And so what has been very nice to see is the uptake from this study from the greater community. We've gone to hub openings and had the local government politicians quote our numbers back to us, and so we've seen such a phenomenal return from doing this study. Not to mention, it's been allow us to stop and look and plan forward about what systems and tools we want to improve. Deloitte has been a fantastic help for us in planning forward for our internal tools as well. Yeah, and so it's also been able to let us break down specifically across all our 4 pillars, as you can see there, what kind of return we're getting from them. So yeah, thank you.
Hiranthi, is your voice holding up?
I'm back again. Yeah, it's gonna chime in and out. Sorry about that, guys. But really, I mean, as Maurice said, it just measured the 4 key pillars of what we do, and it really kind of demonstrated that we are making a significant impact in the community. And as Maurice touched on, we will be looking to redo that piece of work, and based on the support and recommendations from the team at Deloitte, we'll be looking to improve year on year.
So what across those different sort of measurement mechanisms, I think you touched on this right at the start. I mean, about, lessons and sort of some things haven't worked. What has been really successful in terms of measurement, and what have you sort of, reflecting back, you would sort of say, hey, probably shouldn't have done it that way, or should have approached it a little bit differently? Would love to hear your thoughts from either of you on that.
Yeah, so like Hiranthi touched on before, everything we've tried, we've had to stop and think and improve on. So we're always building things with the network, and also always doing constant evaluations. It's that optimization between minimizing noise and maximizing impact. So that iterative process is a constant. That's been very effective for us. The other thing is our process implementation with data specifically, and building a culture in the network of appreciation of the data. And we do that again by taking on a responsibility ourselves and minimizing the noise for the network. We do a lot of the cleaning, as Hiranthi said. We do a lot of the reading of the data ourselves. We every term go through all the hub's data and help them with their data input. But we've also skilled up the support agencies and the support coordinators in training them about data and training them how to clean it and help the networks themselves, as they are the main point of contact for the hubs. And again, always co-building all tools. And another thing that has been very successful is working with our stakeholders to meet their reporting requirements, whether it's government or a local agency, by always using the data that we already have first before we go and introducing anything else to the network.
Yeah.
And I was just going to say, just within that, is there sharing back as well? Because if I'm a hub leader and I'm collecting,
exactly,
I like to see the fruits of my labor. Like, to what extent is that a part of your process?
Definitely. So that's why we have such fantastic buy-in from the network in inputting data. Is one of the reasons is that we always feed it back. It's a policy of ours. And right now we're running a working group right now about how we feed back the data, making sure that the report that we generated a couple of years ago is still relevant for the network. So yeah.
I think I interrupted you, Hiranthi. You were going to say something.
I was just going to say, look, a really practical example is when we first did our national census, we worked again in partnership with Deloitte to kind of co-design and co-build those questions and how we were going to roll it out in the community. And one of the things that we did was we actually built an online form for the hub leaders to use as their survey tool. And we very quickly realized that that wasn't going to work in our network. And so we went from having this fantastic form to very quickly having to adapt and tailor it to actually be a paper-based document. And then there was the question of, do we translate it? And then again, very quickly realized, well, there are about 180 different languages spoken across our network, let alone, written languages. So we realized that that wasn't really going to work either. So we simply had a very simplified English paper-based document, which we issued to all of the schools, and then they worked through their on-the-ground multicultural aides and bilingual workers within their schools to work as kind of interpreters and translators. But also, we use it as a really practical thing to introduce as part of the English language classes that are run in hubs, because form filling is something that everyone's going to have to do at some point in life here in Australia. And so we try to encourage that, real life application of the tools and things that we required as well. So it's, we're always kind of encouraging and again, adapting and improving.
I'm not sure any organisation would have the budget to translate into that many languages. Like it's not feasible. So that sounds really interesting. We might open up to any questions that people have. I've seen, let me have a look. I'll throw over to Amy, who may well have a question. Knowing Amy, she likely has. I mean, positively.
Yeah, look, everybody's free to sort of put questions into the chat. I think we've sort of answered a lot of the questions, but there is a question that has just come up, which is kind of sort of one of my questions too, and is sort of around the fact that data collection is fairly resource intensive. And that's a good point. So I suppose I'm throwing it out to either, I suppose Hiranthi, Kristina, or Maurice. I suppose how have you gotten to the stage where sort of the hubs balance sort of the measurement side of things, of collecting things, while also it not being sort of a burden of sort of collecting that data in the day-to-day. So it'd be great to get those reflections on that journey.
Sure, happy to take that. Essentially, we don't shy away from the fact that we know it is a resource-heavy task. So we try to just minimize the effort it takes. And we've built the Hub portal platform with the network to really make sure that they're telling us exactly the smallest amount we can. And then we take that and we do all the aggregation, we do all the analysis, and then we feed it back to them. So yeah, I think what I'm trying to say is we try to simplify it and embrace it.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
It's probably useful to hear from Kristina, who's actually doing it day to day on the ground.
Yeah, and I'm like closing windows and everything at the moment. I don't know what I'm doing here. Sorry, apologies. Am I still here? Yeah, so for me as a hub leader, just recording data, the portal is really easy to navigate. And I am a bit of an organised freak, so I tend to live my life through Excel documents. So my data is really easy to compile at the end of a week. What I do is I allow myself some time to upload all my program. I actually do my program updates daily. So obviously as the participants come in, I will then do that on a daily basis, but with all my referral side of the data, I do that once a week.
Great.
And adding to that, every hub leader's got their own approach on top of the portal, whether they've got their own school requirements or whether we're the only reporting requirement they have. And so just being simple allows hub leaders to be flexible.
Yeah. Okay, great. There's one more question sort of in the chat here, and I don't know, Nat, it might feed on to sort of the next questions as we go along. But everybody's sort of touched on, obviously, the hubs are working with sort of diverse communities and some of the strategies that you've put in place to sort of address that. Are there any sort of other considerations that might be less top of mind that when you're sort of trying to measure impact across diverse communities, whether it be within your practice or sort of, within the technical side of things that come to mind?
I think the key thing is that, once again, whether it be the census, whether it be evaluations in regards to English class participation, which is probably one of the only other programs that we quite heavily have to evaluate and measure, because once again, we get our funding to be able to implement that from the Department of Home Affairs, is that we always ensure that it's an opt-in. So we always ensure that people know that it's not compulsory to do it, it's an opt-in. We use this data to inform our future practice. So it's always about asking questions to be able to improve the way we work. So it's kind of as simple as that. And if people don't want to do it, they certainly don't have to. But it's also, we're always thinking about how can we make it as easy as possible for the actual hub participant who we're asking the question of, and likewise for the hub leader. So all of the data we collect, the schools and the hub leaders are required to share that back with us once a school term, so at the end of term. And then we kind of say, we're quite deliberate to say, right, that term's done, let's park it and let's move on to the next. So, and hence why, Maurice and I do sit down at the end of each school term, review it, ensure that it's all good to go come, DEX reporting time for us. But then we don't want to contact that hub leader about stuff they've done, 6 months earlier. So we're quite deliberate in routinely checking, routinely cleaning, routinely feeding back. And so that it's not just left to be some annual process, at the end of a year where it's just chaos in schools as well. And as Maurice touched on, we're very mindful that we're based in primary schools, which is a really highly regulated kind of system in itself, and you know, their focus is, you know, teaching kids. It's a school, running to a school curriculum, and a hub is certainly quite a unique kind of model in a school-based setting, because you're dealing with adults, you're dealing with children, you're dealing with different service providers, you're dealing with external community members who are also coming along to the hub, so it's not just for school families. So there's quite a lot of I guess variation in what every hub does and delivers. Every hub is incredibly unique, and so we need to ensure that whatever systems we implement can actually be, you know, applied across, you know, all 100 hubs routinely. So that is part of the reason why we need to keep things very, very simple, but also incredibly adaptable and flexible to suit whichever school setting we're based in.
Sure, great. Nat just had a question: as do most people opt in? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say so. We haven't done a census for a while, so it'll be interesting to see how we go. But, you know, off the top of my head, I think we asked 25 closed-ended questions. So again, we learnt and adapted from the very first time we rolled out a census, where we had open-ended questions, which was once again a nightmare for us to try and collate and summarize and be able to report the findings back. And so, you know, we kind of then again adapted and made it something much more simplistic, so that it made it much easier for the person to complete, but also made it much simpler for us here at CHA to actually review and report back out.
Yeah, great. Fantastic. Just another question in the chat function too, which Sophie, do you use sort of the data you collect to get more schools on board? So I suppose has it been used to try and attract other schools to get involved with the community hubs program? And if not, are there any plans to, I suppose, if I can add to that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So I've been really fortunate to be with the organisation now for almost 6 years, and so in the time I've been here, I was originally quoting 39 hubs. We're now in almost 100 hubs, and we're certainly not stopping there. And we definitely do get asked that question, particularly now from a lot more probably regional and remote areas of Australia, as to when we're coming there and when we're expanding there. So I think when schools, and it's an interesting question, because at the moment we've got a round of expansion that's happening in regional parts of Australia, and it's that thing where I think there's a little bit of hesitancy at first to put their hand up to have a hub, because they haven't quite seen it in practice and they don't quite know how it all works. And then as soon as one hub gets up and running, all the other schools are like, why didn't you ask us? And the reality of it is we asked everyone. So our expression of interest process when we do start hubs in a new region goes to every primary school in that local government area. And as we say, it's an opt-in model, so schools can opt in.
Fantastic. Okay, well, look, I think that's most of the questions from the chat. I'll throw it back to Nat. Thank you for that, and thank you guys for the questions.
Thank you, Amy. I did have one question on my mind. I just wonder, I don't know, maybe Hiranthi or Maurice or maybe Kristina, what's your social impact measurement wish? Like, what do you wish you could measure, but currently you don't measure? Because I think we all have, I don't know, I have some, but you know, it's you know, it's so challenging sometimes to measure some of these concepts. So yeah, what does anything come to mind? Just
I guess,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
No, I was going to say, for me, it's probably that, so we measure at a point in time. And so, and you know, we capture the stories that are happening in the hub now. I would love to follow a family.
Exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, I'd love to follow a family over a 10-year journey. So, and because we know that many of our hubs have got multiple children that come to the school, and you often talk to families that say, oh, you know, my child's in high school now, and if only this school had a hub when they were in primary school. But now the primary age school child is getting the benefit of the early years intervention, and the and you know, the mum's getting the English language classes and all of that. So it would just be phenomenal to kind of see the trajectory of a hub participant over, you know, a 5 or 10 year period. So that's what it is for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people that are in this space would probably, you know, in the community sector or kind of trying to make positive change in the lives of individuals would probably feel the same way. Yeah, yeah. And how you do that is challenging, but, you know, it's on your mind. Yeah. Well, before we go, just wanted to kind of wrap up because we're nearing the end of time here. Firstly, just wanted to thank Community Hubs Australia for sharing your story and talking us through like the journey you've been on and will continue to be on as this program evolves. Like, it's just been quite lovely to hear. And as I said right at the beginning, shine a light on some of this really cool stuff happening in Western Sydney. Today's been that, absolutely. And also Laura from SIMNA will be sending round a little survey link at the end of this. Just if you could fill that out and let us know your thoughts on this webinar, and importantly, whether or not what sort of other events you'd like to see the SIMNA Western Sydney Committee pull together. That would be amazing. I must say I have loved the themes today of reflective practice, and that sort of bringing things back to that little anecdote around bringing data, kind of looking at a subset of data as a group each, and then coming back and talking about it. Love that. I think there's definitely something in that. Also, it just sounds like you're just building a lovely data culture in a world where maybe data is not necessarily top of mind. But yeah, just like hand clap to that, and also just look forward to observing from afar potentially how that goes. So yeah, I've loved that theme. And you know, everyone loves a dashboard. I know I do. So yeah, it's cool to see how that's all coming along and how you've learned across the last number of years you've been managing it. So thank you to you all. And also I need to plug, if anyone wants to reach out to Community Hubs Australia, has any other questions, is really curious about what's going on over there, you can always reach out through LinkedIn. Hiranthi's on LinkedIn. I think all three of you are on LinkedIn. So please reach out to them. They really welcome your questions and connecting. And speaking of connecting, SIMNA are always looking for new members. So it's pretty bargain basement rates to join for a year, and you get access to webinars like this just across Australia, run by different committees on a range of topics for free. And there's the SIMNA Awards that are also coming up that no doubt Laura's right in the middle of doing lots of organisation for. So yeah, so thanks everyone for today.